said that that Buddhism can be said in many ways, but can you indicate a core teaching that most or Buddhists would agree with?
Yeah. So they differ radically on their metaphysical views. There's less disagreement about the ethical views, although in Mahayana, compassion, karuna, becomes the central virtue. It's there from the beginning, but it really does become a touchstone of Mahayana Buddhism. When people join Mahayana, they take a vow to not only attain enlightenment of themselves, which is the point of the older forms of Buddhism, but to help everybody else do the same. So they take a vow to become a bodhisattva, someone who is not only aiming at achieving enlightenment themselves, but helping everybody else to do so. That's the sort of really distinctive ethical thing about Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana means greater vehicle, okay? And it's greater vehicle because you're not just interested in yourself, you're interested in everybody else. But that's an important difference, but it's not as much difference as you find in the metaphysical positions. Okay, so I haven't avoided your question, but let me, that's a bit of background. Because what virtually all Buddhist groups agree on is the original teachings of the historical Buddha. So after he gets it, as it were, he gives his first teaching. We know where that is. It was a place in northeast India called Sanath. And he articulates what is usually known as the Four Noble Truths. Don't get hung up about the word noble, it just means worthy of respect. And the Four Noble Truths diagnose what you might call the human condition and its prospects. They're in the form of a kind of medical, Ayurvedic medical manual. There's an illness, there's a cause, there's a prognosis, and there's a cure. So those are the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths, the first is that life is beset by, and then there's the Sanskrit word is dukkha, and it's virtually impossible to translate into English. The standard translation is suffering, which captures something of it, but its resonances are much broader than that. It encompasses frustration, alienation, dissatisfaction, mental and physical suffering, ennui. I mean, all the things in life you don't like, right? And the thought is, well, life is like that for everybody, okay? Everybody, without exception, gets ill, they die. If they're lucky enough to live to be old, they get frail and they might, lose their mental and physical abilities. They might suffer by losing bodily parts. They suffer marriage breakups, they might lose kids, they lose their job. Look around the world at the moment and see how much dukkha there is. And life's like that. And the first noble truth is, get your head around that. This is, life is full of this stuff. Now, the Buddha wasn't an idiot. Okay, he knew that there are lots of other things in life as well. There are times which give us happiness, which give us joy, and so on. That's not to deny these things. It's just that these things are going to be transient, and even when we have them, we might be fearful of losing them, because we know that everything is impermanent. So even the good things in life come with what you might call an edge. But anyway, that's the first noble truth. The second noble truth is the cause. And the cause is another one of these untranslatable Sanskrit words called Trishna. Usually it's translated as craving, but that really is a terrible translation. What Trishna is about is the effective attitude we bring to bear on the things that happen to us. With wanting things we dislike to go away, with wanting things that we love to continue. So when we suffer, the suffering, a fundamental cause of the suffering is in our mind. It's how we think about these things. Now, of course, suffering is caused by many things. It's not just Trishna. Suffering is caused by our biology getting older. It's caused by events over which we have control, like the coronavirus. It's caused by political leaders who are idiots, take your pick. So anything that happens in life is going to be multi-causal. Indeed, that's one of the sound of metaphysical Buddhist views. Everything in life is this juncture of causes and effects. So when the second noble truth says that the cause of suffering, dukkha, is our mental attitudes, it's just picking out one of these causes. But it's kind of sensible to pick out this cause just because, by and large, most of us don't have much control over the spread of coronavirus, who gets elected politically, etc., etc., etc. But what we do have control over is ourselves. And so it makes sense to single this out as something really important. That's why the second noble truth singles this out. And then there's a story about why people have these attitudes. And a large part of the story is that we just misunderstand the world in which we live. So we repress the thought. I mean, everything is transient, but we repress this thought. Everything has multiple causes and effects, even though we have this kind of simplistic view of the world. So we misunderstand the kind of world in which we live, impermanence of things, their interconnectedness, and we misunderstand ourselves. There's a sense in which we have no self. Now, exactly what that means is not at all obvious, and we might come back to it. However, the fact that we have these inappropriate affects is at least in part because we misunderstand the world in which we live. Okay, so that's the second noble truth. Third noble truth is easy. It's a kind of corollary of the second. If the cause of dukkha is Trishna, then remove the cause, you remove the effect. So the third noble truth just says, well, okay, there's a way out. If you want to get rid of the effect, get rid of the cause. And the fourth noble truth is sometimes called the Eightfold Noble Path. It's a bunch of things you can do to help yourself. And if you're Mahayana, help everybody else as well. So sometimes when people hear about Buddhism, and particularly the first noble truth, it sounds like a pessimistic philosophy. Okay, it's not. It's a realistic philosophy. It says, just get your head around what life actually is. But it's an optimistic philosophy because it says, hey, it's not great, but let me tell you something that you can do to make it better. Okay, which is optimism. And that's the function of the fourth noble truth, which is called the Eightfold Noble Path. And as the name suggests, there are 8 aspects of this which you don't do these things one after the other. You attack them all at once, and there's a whole bunch which we won't go through. But there are things like, first of all, understand the world. Get your head around the world in which you're living. The second is a bunch of things that any Western philosopher would regard as ethical. Don't be an arsehole. Don't hurt other people by the way you live, by what you say, by what you do. And then there are things which are sort of more distinctly Buddhist, such as a bunch of practices like mindfulness and concentration and so on. Again, we can come back to those if you like. But there's this whole raft of things which you can do to help you to decrease the dukkha in your life. And, if you're a religious Buddhist, you're going to say, well, and you can succeed in this. So it's going to take a rather long time. So as a religion, Buddhists all Indian Buddhists believe, and most Chinese Buddhists believe, that there's rebirth. And when you die, you come back and you cycle through the round of rebirth, samsara as it's called. And you're going to keep doing this until you achieve enlightenment, really getting it, as the Buddha did. And enlightenment is not like going to heaven. Okay, you achieve enlightenment in this life. The Buddha did, and he hung around for another 30 or 40 or 50 years teaching people. But you're going to live in this round of samsara until you finally get it. So it might take you a bloody long time. Eons and eons and eons, or kalpas and kalpas and kalpas, as the Indians put it. If you don't believe in rebirth, and I certainly don't, then you might think that attaining enlightenment like this is impossible. I rather suspect so, but it's obviously some kind of moral ideal. Moral ideals are often not achievable in toto. That doesn't mean that you don't strive for them, because even approximating to them makes life better. So the Buddhist views make perfectly good sense, even if you don't believe in rebirth. Okay, so that's the Idiot's Guide to the Four Noble Truths. And as I say, most schools of Buddhism endorse these, although they work out the details in different ways.
रंग पिचकारी